I used to believe the workplace was like a second home, where hard work was rewarded and respect was mutual. But now, when I look back, I realize how easily silence can become a cage. It all began with a smile I thought was harmless, a compliment I brushed off as nothing. I never imagined that what felt like mentorship would turn into manipulation, and that I'd have to learn courage the hardest way possible. Before all of this, my life was peaceful, beautifully ordinary. I'd wake up before sunrise, make tea for my mother, and rush through the crowded streets with my earphones plugged in, dreaming of success. I loved my job. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. A small office with bright fluorescent lights and the soft hum of computers. I remember the smell of paper and ink, the friendly greetings, the sound of laughter near the coffee machine. I was the youngest on the team, eager, idealistic, and full of trust. I believed that kindness always meant safety, that respect was automatic, that the world was fair. Then, small things began to change. At first, I didn't even notice. He was my senior, experienced, respected, the kind of man everyone admired. He started guiding me on projects, praising my work, giving me advice that felt genuine. I was grateful, but slowly, the air around those conversations shifted. The way his eyes lingered too long, the way his hand brushed mine and stayed a second longer than it should have, the way his jokes began to sound like tests, seeing how much I would tolerate before I'd react. I laughed nervously, pretending not to understand. Because that's what we're taught, isn't it? To avoid making things awkward. To believe we're imagining it. To think maybe I'm overreacting. I remember going home one evening, sitting in my room, staring at my reflection, wondering why I felt so uneasy when nothing bad had really happened. My mother asked if I was okay, and I said, just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was confused. How do you explain discomfort that doesn't leave a mark? How do you name something that hides behind a smile? Weeks passed. The compliments became personal. The texts after work, the messages that started with just checking in and ended with, you looked beautiful today. Each word chipped away at my peace. Yet I kept silent because I didn't want to create a scene. He was respected, powerful, and I was new. Who would believe me? Who would risk their position to defend a junior employee's discomfort? The realization hit me slowly, like water rising around your feet, 1 inch at a time. The day it truly sank in, he cornered me in the hallway after everyone had left. His tone was still soft, his words still disguised as concern, but there was something in his eyes that made me step back. He said, "You owe me for how much I've helped you." That sentence tore through every illusion I had. It wasn't mentorship, it was control. It wasn't care, it was possession, and I froze. That night, I cried silently, not because of what happened, but because I couldn't speak. Fear has a voice of its own. It whispers lies like, stay quiet. No one will believe you. You'll ruin your career. And I believed those lies. For weeks, I carried them like stones in my chest, pretending everything was fine. I smiled at work. I avoided his eyes. I convinced myself I could just survive by ignoring him. But silence has a cost. Every day I stayed quiet, I lost a piece of myself, my confidence, my joy, my trust. Until one morning, I saw another young intern, bright-eyed, innocent, and eager to please, talking to him the same way I once did. And something inside me broke. I couldn't let it happen again. Not to her, not to anyone. That was my breaking point. Fear turned into fury, not loud but steady. The kind of quiet anger that builds strength. I started documenting everything. Texts, emails, the times he called me after hours. My hands trembled as I saved screenshots, but I did it anyway. It was terrifying, yet liberating. For the first time, I felt like I was reclaiming something. My truth. It took me 3 days to gather the courage to report him. I walked into the HR office with my heart pounding so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. My voice shook when I spoke, but I didn't stop. I told them everything, every boundary crossed, every moment I'd stayed silent. There was a long pause afterward. I expected disbelief, but instead, the HR manager looked at me, really looked, and said, "You did the right thing." That sentence felt like air after drowning. It didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me I wasn't alone. The investigation that followed was heavy. Whispers in the corridors, judgmental looks, questions that made me relive everything I wanted to forget. But I stayed. I showed up every day, chin up, eyes steady. People avoided me at first. Some called me brave. Others said I'd exaggerated. I learned that speaking up doesn't always bring applause. Sometimes it brings isolation, but it also brings integrity. And that's worth more than silence. When the truth came out, it wasn't dramatic like in movies. No shouting, no confrontation. Just quiet, undeniable facts laid bare. He resigned the next week. The company issued new workplace policies, workshops, and anonymous reporting channels. They said it was part of a culture. Change. But I knew. It began with one trembling voice refusing to stay quiet. I remember standing in that same hallway, months later, the one where I'd once felt cornered and powerless. This time I wasn't afraid. The light through the window looked softer. I could finally breathe again. Healing didn't happen overnight. It came in small moments, being able to laugh freely, to trust again, to look people in the eye without flinching. But most of all, it came from forgiving myself. For the silence, for the fear, for believing that courage meant being unafraid. Now I know courage is speaking even when your voice shakes. It's choosing truth over comfort, dignity over approval. Sometimes I still hear that old whisper of fear, the one that says, "What if people talk?" But then I remember the intern's face, the one who might have gone through the same thing if I hadn't spoken up. And I remind myself, silence protects no one, not even yourself. I share my story not for sympathy, but for awareness. Because harassment doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it hides behind compliments, concern, or mentorship. It thrives in silence, and the moment we name it, it begins to lose power. If you've ever felt unsafe, unheard, or doubted your own discomfort, please listen to that inner voice. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. And when you speak, you don't just free yourself, you free others who were too afraid to try. I was once the girl who smiled through fear. Now, I am the woman who speaks without trembling. And if my story reaches even one person who needs to hear it, then everything I went through was not in vain.